Hi, friends, and welcome to Self Meets Soul, a podcast where we discuss how to discover what sets your soul on fire and modern ways to integrate spirituality into your daily life. My name is Juliana, and today we are going to be talking about the past and how it affects the present. So, the idea for this episode came to me actually in a therapy session. So, I was talking to my therapist about this date that I had went on and how I couldn't help but compare the guy and just the date in general to the first date that I had in my last relationship. Because in my brain, it's like, okay, well, the last time you had a relationship, this was how your first date went. This was how you felt. So if you don't feel that way after a first date with someone, then probably not worth your time. Now, she had talked to me about how that can be kind of detrimental and how that can set these expectations moving forward for myself and how I think dates should look like. And it's kind of not fair to the guy that I'm going on dates with. And that definitely kind of resonated with me because I knew that, right? I was like, okay, well, does it really make sense for me to be comparing these first dates to that first date? Because, like, the relationship ended. So, does that really make sense, But that was kind of how I was going through it logically. And she had also mentioned, it's really important to just be in the present and how by removing myself from these expectations and just getting those kind of out of my head and just being fully present in these moments, giving these guys and this date like a clean, brand new slate, it might end up working better in my favor. And I might end up leaving these dates happier or more fulfilled, even if I'm like, I'm not interested in seeing them again, but it may make my feelings a little bit better with it. So this just got me thinking. And what living in the present means is what I think a lot of people think it is, when they think about being present, but not just in big moments or small moments, but in all moments. Being present is being truly removed, not just from technology or others, really. It's being fully in that moment mentally. In my yoga classes, a lot, I do little check ins with my students throughout class, kind of reminding them to. I will, we'll be flowing and then I'll take them down to their mat in a child's pose and I'll remind them to come back to the corners of their mat and notice that, yes, they are physically present in this yoga class, but are they mentally present as well? Because I think so often our minds easily tend to just drift away. They tend to either think about the past and worry about the past, or what we don't really talk about in this episode here, but this is also a big thing, worrying about the future. I think that honestly, us not living in the present is what kind of deters us sometimes from achieving our future goals or just even being happier. This last weekend, I saw Inside Out 2, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend. Even if you just wait for it to come out on Disney Plus, I would recommend, because this episode was truly meant for, I think, the adults. In fact, me and my friends were getting annoyed because there were these kids in the back of the theater and they were like running around and, they clearly were just not interested in the movie. But that's because this movie is for us. It's not really for kids, even though it's animated. It's for adults, it's for young adults, it's for teenagers because of this main character anxiety. So if you saw the movie, you're going to know where I'm going here. But if you haven't seen the movie, just a little tidbit about anxiety. This isn't too big of a spoiler, but there is a scene where Riley, that's the main character, she is unable to fall asleep because in the brain, the imagination is like they're all in these cubicles and they're like drawing up scenarios, future scenarios for her to panic about, or they're thinking about things in the past that she said that she did that gives her so much anxiety that she is unable to fall asleep. And I know dang well that this has happened to all of you before at some point, whether you were unable to focus on the present because you were thinking of the past or thinking about the future. So living in the present in all moments really means allowing your brain to just stop analyzing for a moment. Now, this is hard because this is pretty much against our nature, right? We are constantly trying to dissect our environment, find meaning out of what we're seeing, out of what we're hearing. But a lot of the time, this will cause us to put our own judgment onto things. And then from then on, that shapes what we're seeing in front of us. And it allows us to be removed from the present moment. Even honestly, sometimes like having your phone and taking pictures of things, it removes you from the present moment. On 4th of July, I spent time with two of my friends, and we really did not have our phones literally all day. And we were painting on the grass, on just some canvases, and we were literally just in our bikinis because it is literally Satan's lair out here in Arizona. It was like 1:16 that day. And we're painting, and I thought, oh my gosh, I wish I had my phone. Like, this is so cute. We look so cute right now. But even though I don't have any pictures from that day, I didn't take any videos, I didn't really post any Snapchat stories, any Instagram stories, I was so present that whole day that when I think about it in my memory and I go through that day, it is so abundantly clear to me. My feelings, my just outlook on that whole day, things that happened, it's so clear. So being in the present can mean things like that. And we all, I think, strive, especially if you listen to this podcast, strive to be more present in our everyday life. And one of the ways to achieve that and to be more present, to remove that anxiety, to be happier with where you are at right in this moment, from you sitting on your couch by yourself watching TV to you spending time with your friends, being present in both of those. One of the ways to achieve that is through letting go of your past and finding a way to move on from it, finding a way to forgive it, finding a way to leave the past in the past and not drag it in to your present moments. And that's really challenging because, as we know, our past, our whole childhood, for example, shapes who we are today. Now, it's not saying forget your past. Definitely don't forget your past. And I think that's unreasonable to ask of someone to forget their past, but to let it stay where it belongs. Because a lot of the times, those negative moments in our past, they impact our present and our future in negative ways, even when we don't intend for it to. So past trauma, it does negatively shape you and impact you when you look at it in a certain light, right? When you can't move on from it, when you can't forgive it. And past trauma can be a wide range of things. It can be your relationships, right? That can be familial relationships. It can be friendships. It can be romantic relationships. How many times have the girlies been with a guy who say, oh, I can't date you, or I'm not ready to date you because my ex did this, blah, blah, blah. And you're just like, move on. I'm not her. I'm not them, you know? Why are you letting this thing that happened to you when you were 16 years old affect you now as a 25-year-old? Like, you clearly that's something you haven't dealt with, right? Or even maybe like trauma someone has with their parent or something like that. Oh, I felt really abandoned by my parent. And yes, that is a wound. So yes, you may be, if you were, feeling neglected from your parent or abandoned, you may have an anxious attachment style in your relationships from then on out. And yes, it's important for whoever you get involved with to acknowledge that, but that's not an excuse for certain behaviors that might make someone else uncomfortable or then ruin your current relationships. You can have negative trauma from past jobs. For example, I got laid off from a job in November that I really actually liked doing. I loved the people I worked with. I literally loved going to work. Like, I was going in office every day and I did not care. If you asked me to do that today, I would be so annoyed. But I got laid off, and I've had plenty of friends who've gotten laid off from jobs, who've gotten fired. But and that happens and you deal with it and it sucks and it hurts and it's scary, but you can't then carry that on into other jobs. It can't then manifest into, okay, now I think my boss hates me because I did this one thing wrong and oh my God, now I'm going to get fired. You see how that holds you back. That past trauma, that past situation is now affecting your present. Because when you start having those anxious thoughts like that, then you start to spiral. And then those anxious thoughts start to physically manifest into your life. Then you do start messing up more at work, right? Because then you're anxious about it. So then it happens. Where the mind goes, energy flows. And that's in either direction. If the mind's going to this dark place, then you might start to notice, oh my God, I have the worst luck. Why does bad stuff keep happening to me? When the mind goes to a positive place, when you're feeling all happy and light, you might feel really lucky. Something might happen that, typically would set you on edge or upset you. But when your mind's in that positive place, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. Even misfortune, even something as little as just like being unlucky and having unlucky things happen to you can affect your present. This is something so small, but it just shows you like this can happen for that too. Last week, my tire light came on. I just got a new car in January. It's the first car I've ever bought for myself, so it was a big deal. So I'm extra careful of her. She's my baby girl. And I was driving and the tire light came on and I immediately was like, I pulled over so fast into a parking lot. And then I'm like, what the heck? I'm looking at all four tires. They don't seem flat. So I'm like, okay, that's good. But I completely derailed my plans to then go drive to a tire shop. They looked at it and thankfully it was just a nail. So it was patchable. Didn't need to spend hundreds of dollars on a new tires or whatever. But you can bet to this day, this happened a week ago, anytime I see something shiny in the road or something sparkle, I literally like move my wheel to try and swerve it because now I cannot stop thinking about, oh my God, if that's a nail, it's gonna get in my tire and I'm gonna have to replace them all. Something as little as that. The past affects how you behave, how you think, how you feel in the present moment. I was talking to my mom about situations like that. I also had another unlucky situation with a rock hitting my windshield and paying $1,000 to get my windshield replaced. And so, I'm calling her all upset about stuff. And I'm like, it's making me not want to drive because, I don't want this to happen again. Because I literally just replaced a windshield last year. Don't move to Arizona. That's all I got to tell you folks. But anyways, she starts to tell me about how she refuses to go on scooters, Vespas, motorcycles, things like that. She's from Italy. After one of her friends, I think, I don't know if it was her or one of her friends, but someone got into a motorcycle accident, or maybe it was a classmate of hers who died. I'm not sure, but someone got into an accident and she's like, I refuse to get on one today. And I said, well, I get that. Like, I got in a car accident and I did not, it was at the airport and I did not drive or pick anyone up from the airport for almost a year. And I'm like, I get that. These traumatic things happen to you and it makes you not want to repeat them, right? To avoid them at all costs in your present. And I was like, yeah, that's not too big of a deal, Mom, because you're driving a car, like you're not in Italy. You don't have to drive scooters and stuff like that. And I said, I think it becomes an issue sometimes when your past starts to affect your present and you adjust your lifestyle because of things that have happened in your past. So after hearing some of these examples, maybe some things have come to mind for you about just ways that your own past trauma, your own relationships, your own just past events have prevented you from living in the present, from fully being able to do the things you want to do, or from even just shaping your mindset. So, how to know that your past is holding you back? How to identify if something is truly a block for you? You feel things like anxiety, right? I mentioned that just a bit ago. When something in your present life is giving you anxiety, and you know, God, this reminds me of this, then that's how you know it can be a block for you. It can be holding you back. I had a thing with this guy, a situationship. I know we all love those. And I really wanted to put a title on it, and he didn't want to put a title. And, obviously that did not end well later. The situationship ended all messy. It ended up with me getting my heart broken. And then fast forward like 2 years, I think, 2 years. And then I was in that again with a different guy who did not want to put a title on it. And I'm getting all of this anxiety. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this reminds me of him. And I remember how that ended. And I can't do that again. That's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Your past may allow you to create different boundaries in the present. But, sometimes it just depends, right? It depends on what the outcome is. You may know that your past is holding you back if you're avoiding things. And you also may notice it through developing some preconceived notions. For example, this is a really silly one. I hope no one lives in this state who listens to this at this point, because you're going to be like, that's a little rude. But I had a situation with this girl in high school who I really did not like her. I really did not like this girl. We just did not like each other. We did not get along. Okay. And she was from Minnesota. Okay. This was just one situation, whatever. Then I move on to college and I'm living with a suite mate, and she was an actual nightmare to live with. And she was also from Minnesota. So this was just a year after me having that beef with that girl from high school. So now when people tell me they're from Minnesota, I actually get an ick. And my dad had to live in Minnesota part-time recently for his job. And I was like, oh my gosh. And he was like, it's really nice here, actually. There's plenty of sweet people. Fast forward to literally like 2 years ago, this girl that I ended up being roommates with, that roommate from the past episodes, she's from Minnesota. So, you guys, I can't help it. I just got now I'm like, I don't know about those Minnesotans. Obviously, I don't actually think it's all people from Minnesota, but I'm having these preconceived notions now. There is literally something in my brain that pulls back when someone tells me they're from there, because I have had 3 bad experiences. And I think since it's all women, this doesn't necessarily happen with men, but now I have preconceived notions about people who are from there. And those are so prevalent in your life. I encourage you to maybe think about that. Think about what some of your beliefs are and why you have those beliefs. And if it is because of past trauma, past issues, something in your past where there was conflict, or just something that you have not dealt with. And that can be from something as early as childhood. And just see how those preconceived notions are preventing you from fully just living in the present and fully accepting things as they are. Now, the good news is that your past doesn't always affect you negatively. It can shape you in ways that are actually beneficial for you. So I have moved, I've lived in 5 states. I've moved I can't even remember how many different cities. I think I went to 7 schools before college. Yeah, that sounds about right. So, a lot of people sometimes see moving as a negative. They can honestly see it as a traumatic experience. And I'm sure my sister may have had different, feelings about this because we were different ages when we had to move. But something I wrote about in my college essay actually is how moving shaped me for the better. The reason that I am the way I am is because I was forced to constantly be put in these uncomfortable situations where I was the new girl. No one really cared about talking to me or getting to know me as the new girl. And I needed to make friends. And so the only way I was going to make friends is if I went up to people and I was not shy, right? And I took that step. And I'm really grateful for that. I'm so grateful that I have not grown up living in one place, because not only has it made me more outgoing and easy for me to connect with people, it has allowed me to see people, see the differences in how people are, where they grow up, how that can change someone, be friends with people of all backgrounds. And I think that also made the transition to college really seamless for me, because I had already done all the moving. I've already had to make new friends. I've already met people from different parts of the country, sometimes different parts of the world. So all of that of my past and having to grow up moving legit every 2 years did help me in my present and helped me see things for as they are. So now that we've kind of identified what kind of past traumas can affect you, how to know if that past trauma is holding you back, how can you move on from it? Because moving on from it is what is going to truly allow you to live fully in the present without putting all these expectations, because that's really what this boils down to. You're putting expectations on the job, the relationship, the house, the city you move to, the friendship. Like, you're putting expectations on things in your present because of your past. And what happens when we put expectations on things usually? Louder for the people back. What happens usually is you get disappointed. And then you get anxious. And then you get sad. And then you get angry. All of these negative, I'm saying that with quotes around them, negative emotions that you don't want to experience, that we try to avoid because we don't want them, all of those expectations usually leads to that. So the only way to get rid of all of these expectations, these preconceived notions, the anxiety, to stop avoiding things, is to address what it is from the past that is causing us to feel this way, to think this way, to act this way. So some ways to move on from the past is to journal about it. Journaling can be really freeing because you are literally just writing down, brain dumping everything without, there's that word expectation again, having an expectation of how you should be sounding, because there is none. You're just writing it down. It's coming from your heart. And when you brain dump the situation, when you talk about it, write about it, I should say, in a journal, you're physically like diverting that energy and letting it go. This is held up inside of you. It's held up in the brain. It's maybe held up in a chakra that just needs to open and be released. You're letting that go through writing about it. And you may notice you feel a bit lighter about that. Another way to move on from the past is to just talk it out. I mentioned in the intro that all of this came about from a conversation with my therapist, because I straight up said to her, I can't help but compare all of these dates to my last boyfriend and how our first date went. So then I get disappointed and then I'm like, next, because it doesn't feel that way. And she was the one who helped me identify that me thinking about that and expecting it to be like this thing in my past is holding me back from finding that person I might actually connect with. If a therapist is not accessible for you, talk it out with a friend, talk it out with family, just someone that you trust with and you feel that when you talk to them, it's a no judgment. Another way to move on from the past is to face it head on by letting your emotions flow freely. Sometimes you just need to cry about stuff. Like, you really just need to let that ish go. And you may be thinking, oh, I don't want to cry about it. It happened so long ago. Oh, I feel dumb feeling angry about this because, like, it happened so long ago. There's no reason for me to be so angry. Get over it. You notice how these are all kind of negative self-talk? I'm saying that because that happens in my brain, and I know that happens in so many of yours. But let yourself be angry. I don't care if the trauma of this relationship happened 10 years ago. If you are realizing that it is affecting your ability to live in the present, to develop new relationships, to just be in a healthier mindset, then be angry about it. Get angry, yell into a pillow, break stuff. Listen to Break Stuff by Limp Bizkit. Great song, guys. Cry about it. It's okay, because when you are putting an expectation, God, notice that word. It's so powerful because it really does affect your ability to live in the present. When you are putting that expectation on how you should be feeling about your past trauma or how you should be over it, you are holding on to that block. Your brain can say all you want. You can get over that now. It's not a big deal. This doesn't actually bother you anymore. Your brain can say that all you want, but what matters is in here. What matters is what is being held onto in your heart, how the trauma is still stored in your body, because it definitely can be. So let the emotions flow freely. Another way to move on from the past is to simply forgive. And I say simply kind of as a joke because I think we all know that forgiving is not as easy as it sounds when you are harboring some anger or resentment towards a past relationship or just a past trauma in general. You may need to forgive that person from your past who wronged you. You got cheated on and now you have an issue trusting people. That sounds about right. That makes sense. But sometimes the only way to move on from that is to forgive that person. That can be literally messaging them, even though it's like, hey, we haven't talked to you in a while, or I didn't ask for your forgiveness. It could be literally messaging them saying, I forgive you for this. Or it could also be just writing it out, writing a letter to that person, forgiving them. It could be you forgiving yourself. Maybe you made a really dumb decision that caused something in your life to just snowball, and maybe you need to forgive yourself for that. You can say to yourself, I forgive myself. A really good song for this, for the ladies and gents who like hip hop, I actually play this in my yoga class pretty often, is Parasail by Travis Scott. He says that a lot. I forgive myself. I forgive myself. I choose to be free. There's a lot of affirmations in that song. So you can say to yourself, I forgive myself. Or again, you can write a letter to yourself saying that you forgive yourself for whatever it was that caused the trauma that's holding you back. And lastly, a way to move on from your past is to develop a growth mindset. Now, you hear the words growth mindset a lot. growth versus fixed, how you don't want a fixed mindset, you want a growth mindset. Developing a growth mindset means looking at this past event, this past trauma that's holding you back, and seeing how can I grow from this? How can this shape me for the better? How is this going to spark my involvement, just help me blossom into my higher self, allow me to be so physically and mentally just enveloped in the present moment? And developing that growth mindset means really looking at that past trauma, past whatever it is, and seeing the positives that came out of it. And that can be really hard, especially if we're talking about something that was so heart-wrenching, so life-changing, that you're like, there was no good in that. That was awful. That was one of the worst moments of my life. But I promise you, looking back on that now, if you really look at it, there is something in that shaped you into who you are in a positive way, or can shape you in a positive way. You got let go from that job that you were really passionate about. You weren't expecting it. Okay, how do we develop a growth mindset from that? Looking at that job and saying, I'm so grateful for the time that I had at that job, for the people that I met, for the skills that I gained. How amazing is it that I got to experience that, because now I can use that in a new career, in a new passion, in a new field that Spirit wants me to be in, that I am called to be in. Looking at that past relationship where you maybe got cheated. Okay, how can I develop a growth mindset from that? Looking at that and realizing that had nothing to do with me, that had to do with them. And maybe that was the only thing that was going to propel me out of that relationship into one that I'm truly meant to be. All in all, friends, the past is heavy. The past is thick. The past makes who we are, but it does not have to be who you are forced to be and who you continue to be. It's not where you're meant to be stuck. By forgiving things from your past, by facing it head on and letting those emotions go from it, by journaling about it, by allowing yourself to truly move on, you will be more happy living in the present. You will be more able to live in the present. You're not going to be in the shower thinking about regrets. All of these things I wish I did, I wish I said, I wish I acted this way. Because when you let go of the past, you are truly able to find peace. And when you are able to find peace, you can fully live in the present, which allows you to shape your future in a way that you want it to be. Well, that's all that I have for you today, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. If you like this episode, please be sure to leave a review and share this podcast. You never know who in your life might resonate with it. Chat with you later.